For context, my wife, Lisa, has always been the life of the party. Charming, loud, and utterly intoxicating to everyone around her. I used to admire her ability to light up a room, but over time, I started noticing something else. She wasn't just shining. She was burning people, especially me. For years, Lisa treated me like a running joke. Her favorite pastime was cutting me down in front of our friends. Every gathering became a comedy special where I was the punchline. "Oh, don't mind my husband," she'd say, wine glass in hand. "He thinks ordering takeout counts as cooking." Or, "He couldn't fix a leaky faucet if his life depended on it." I laughed along. What else could I do? I loved her, and I didn't want to be the guy who couldn't take a joke. But every laugh chipped away at me. Friends started looking at me differently, not as the guy they used to admire, but as Lisa's poor husband. Then came the affair. I found out the way most people do, by accident. She left her phone unlocked on the counter, and a message from Matt popped up. The preview alone was enough to make my stomach turn. "Can't wait to see you tonight." Same room? I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. But instead of confronting her right away, I decided I was done playing the fool. If Lisa loved a good show, I'd give her one she'd never forget. I spent the next 2 weeks planning a surprise anniversary party for Lisa. She adored grand gestures, so she didn't suspect a thing when I suggested hosting a big bash for our friends. I even booked a small event hall, someplace elegant, with just the right amount of intimacy. What Lisa didn't know was that the theme of the night wasn't love. It was truth. The moment I decided on the party, I knew it couldn't just be a dramatic confrontation. It needed to be a masterpiece, something that would leave her no room to spin her lies, no way to twist the narrative. Lisa was a master manipulator. She could convince you the sky was green if she wanted to, but I was done being fooled. I started collecting evidence. I knew the hotel room from the message, so I booked a room 2 floors above it. The next time I saw a text confirming her meetup with Matt, with my phone in hand and my heart pounding, I followed her. She didn't even try to hide it. She parked in the lot, adjusted her lipstick in the mirror, and practically skipped into the lobby. My pulse was in my ears as I trailed her to the elevator. I stayed back far enough not to be seen, but I caught the floor number when she pressed the button. I knew she was heading to room 612. I waited a few minutes before making my move. A bribe to a distracted maid got me into the room directly above theirs, where I set up my phone camera pointed at the balcony below. The angle wasn't perfect, but it caught enough. Lisa, laughing and tossing her hair, and Matt, an older man with a wedding band of his own, pulling her in close. I wanted to storm down there and rip the door off its hinges, but I knew I had to wait. This wasn't just about catching her. This was about making sure everyone saw who she really was. Over the next few days, I gathered more. I scrolled through her phone at night while she slept. The messages were sickening. Cheap excuses, stolen moments, and a lot of talk about how boring I was. One text even joked about me being so clueless that I'd probably bring her breakfast in bed while she was still glowing from her escapades. I saved everything. Screenshots, emails, photos. I compiled it all into a neat little folder labeled Lisa's Lies. I even found a few of her posts on social media where she'd subtly bragged about her affair without anyone catching on. A photo of a martini glass with the caption, "Sometimes the best moments are the ones you can't share." Disgusting. With the evidence in place, I started preparing for the party. I hired a videographer under the guise of capturing our love story for our anniversary. In reality, I was going to play the footage of her affair at the party, edited together like a greatest hits reel. The videographer didn't need to know what he was really filming for. I had the clips ready and just told him to create a slideshow that celebrated our journey. Lisa, of course, was thrilled about the idea. "You're finally getting it, babe," she'd said, kissing me on the cheek. "I love that you're making an effort." I smiled back, swallowing the bile in my throat. I was making an effort, all right. An effort to burn her carefully curated world to the ground. The days leading up to the party were surreal. Lisa was on her best behavior, practically glowing with anticipation. She loved the idea of a party dedicated to her, and she was soaking up every second of the planning process. She even started bragging to her friends about how sweet I was for doing all this. "I think he's finally learning how to treat me," she said during one of her loud phone calls. I overheard her from the kitchen while pretending to work on the guest list. The irony was almost too much. The guest list itself was strategic. I made sure to include everyone who mattered in Lisa's life, her closest friends, her family, even her coworkers. And of course, I made sure to invite a few of my friends who had witnessed her belittling me over the years. They'd been warning me about her for ages, but I'd been too blind to see it. This party was for them too, a vindication of sorts. The day before the party, I made one final addition to the guest list, Matt. I created a fake email account and sent him an anonymous invitation. The message was simple: "You've been cordially invited to celebrate Lisa's anniversary. Come join us at venue for an unforgettable evening. RSVP not required. Just show up. Trust me, you won't want to miss it." I doubted he'd come, but if he did, it would be the cherry on top of my carefully baked disaster. The hall was perfect, elegant, intimate, with just enough room for 50 or so guests. Lisa had no idea what was coming, so she'd happily approve the decorations: a romantic theme with fairy lights, soft jazz, and a slideshow projector for the memories video. While Lisa was busy getting her nails done the morning of the event, I arrived early to set everything up. I tested the projector to make sure the clips played smoothly. Watching the footage again, her and Matt kissing in the hotel lobby, her laughing at his jokes, made my blood boil. But I reminded myself that tonight wasn't just about anger. It was about justice. The videographer arrived, clueless as ever, and finalized the edits for the slideshow. I kept the order simple: a mix of genuine photos from our life together, followed by the clips of her affair. The betrayal would start subtly, a text notification popping up on her phone during a candid couple's photo, and escalate into the explicit. The final shot was a freeze frame of her and Matt, caught red-handed on my hidden camera. I'd rehearsed my speech a dozen times in my head. I wouldn't shout. I wouldn't lose control. I'd let the footage speak for itself and let Lisa's world unravel in real time. By the time Lisa arrived at the venue, guests were already milling around, sipping champagne and complimenting the setup. She walked in, radiant in a red dress, completely oblivious. "You've outdone yourself, babe," she whispered, wrapping her arms around me. I forced a smile and kissed her cheek. The party began smoothly enough. People laughed, toasted, and mingled. Lisa was in her element, basking in the attention and making sure everyone knew this night was about her. She even pulled me aside at one point to thank me. "This is perfect," she said, beaming. "You're really trying, aren't you?" I nodded, barely holding it together. "I just want everyone to see the real you." Her smile faltered for a split second, but she didn't question it. She was too busy reveling in the moment. I watched the clock. The slideshow was scheduled for 8:30 p.m. As the time drew closer, I noticed a few nervous tics in Lisa's behavior. She kept glancing at her phone, stepping away from the crowd to check her messages. Was she expecting someone? My heart pounded with anticipation. At exactly 8:28 p.m., I took the microphone and tapped it gently. The chatter quieted as everyone turned to look at me. Lisa stood in the center of the room, her face glowing with pride. She had no idea what was coming. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I began, my voice steady. "This evening is about celebrating love, honesty, and everything that makes a marriage strong." I paused, letting the words sink in. "And sometimes it's about uncovering the truth." I nodded to the videographer. The lights dimmed, and the slideshow began. The room fell silent as the slideshow began. The opening frames were innocent enough. Photos of Lisa and me on our wedding day, laughing at the beach, cuddling on the couch with our dog. Soft jazz played in the background, and I could feel Lisa's eyes on me, glowing with appreciation. But the shift came quickly. The next image was a screenshot of a text notification from Matt, overlaid on a photo of us from a family barbecue. The message preview was short but damning. "I can't wait to see you tonight." Confusion rippled through the room. People exchanged glances, and Lisa's smile faltered. "What is this?" she whispered. her voice sharp but low enough that only I could hear. I didn't respond. I just motioned for the videographer to keep it rolling. The images transitioned into video clips. The first was the grainy footage I'd taken from the hotel balcony. It wasn't crystal clear, but it didn't need to be. Lisa's unmistakable silhouette was there, kissing Matt as they walked into the building together. Gasps echoed around the room. Lisa froze. Her glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. "Turn this off," she hissed, her voice a mix of panic and fury. But the video kept playing. More footage of their stolen moments. A clip of her laughing at something he'd said, her hand brushing his arm in a way that was far too intimate. Then came the freeze frame of them together on the balcony, the final, damning shot. The jazz music had long since cut out, replaced by the stunned silence of our guests. It was the kind of silence that felt alive, pulsing with disbelief, judgment, and a growing sense of betrayal. Lisa snapped. "What the hell are you doing?" she shouted, stepping toward me. Her voice cracked, teetering between anger and desperation. I kept my composure, refusing to let her hysteria break my resolve. "I wanted everyone to see the real you," I said, my tone calm but cutting. "The woman who spent years tearing me down while sneaking around behind my back." A few people started murmuring. Others stared at Lisa in shock. Her best friend, Jenna, put a hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Lisa, is this true?" "Of course not," Lisa shouted, her face flushed. "This is fake. He's twisting things to make me look bad." I pulled out my phone, holding it up for everyone to see. "These are the messages from your lover, Lisa. Shall I read them out loud? Or should I play the audio from last week when you called him your escape from this boring life?" Lisa lunged for the phone, but I stepped back, my voice rising just enough to command attention. "You don't get to silence me anymore, Lisa. You've had years to tell your lies. Tonight, we deal in truth." Matt showed up halfway through the chaos, and it was as if the universe had hand-delivered poetic justice. He walked into the room, spotted the slideshow, and froze. The man looked like a deer caught in headlights, clutching a gift bag that now seemed absurdly out of place. "Matt!" Lisa screamed, her voice shrill and panicked. "What the hell are you doing here?" The room collectively turned toward him, and the whispers turned into an uproar. Matt stammered something unintelligible before turning on his heel and bolting for the door. It would have been comical if the situation weren't so tragic. By now, Lisa was in full meltdown mode. Tears streamed down her face, ruining her carefully applied makeup. "You've ruined everything," she screamed at me, her voice cracking. "You've humiliated me in front of everyone." I met her gaze, unflinching. "No, Lisa, you did that to yourself." As Matt fled the scene, the room dissolved into a cacophony of whispered conversations and pointed stares. The facade Lisa had carefully constructed over the years was crumbling, and she knew it. Her composure, the one she had weaponized to make me feel small all these years, was gone. All that remained was panic. "You're insane," Lisa spat at me, her voice loud enough to hush the crowd again. "You think this makes you look good? Parading your insecurities like this in front of everyone?" I tilted my head, feigning curiosity. "Insecurities? Is that what you call proof of your lies and betrayal?" "You don't understand," she screeched, her voice climbing another octave. "You've been so dull, so ungrateful. I had to do something for myself." Her words hung in the air, echoing through the room like the final crack of a whip. People's expressions shifted from shock to disgust. The poor husband everyone had pitted for years was now the wronged man standing tall, while the beloved social butterfly revealed herself as a vindictive fraud. Jenna, Lisa's best friend, stepped forward, her face a mixture of disbelief and disappointment. "Lisa, is this true? You really cheated on him?" Lisa's eyes darted around the room, looking for an ally, but found none. Her friends, her family, they were all staring at her as if she were a stranger. No, this is all blown out of proportion," Lisa stammered, her hands trembling. He's making it worse than it was. I let out a dry laugh, shaking my head. You can't even own up to it now, can you? Even with the evidence literally playing in front of you. I turned to the crowd. 4 years, I've been the butt of Lisa's jokes. The boring husband. The guy who could never measure up. Well, here's the truth. Lisa's the one who doesn't measure up. She lied. She cheated. And she humiliated me. And now, everyone knows. Just as the tension in the room seemed to reach its peak, a voice called out from the back. It was Lisa's mother, her face pale but determined. Is this true, Lisa? Did you cheat on him? Lisa opened her mouth to argue, but her voice faltered. The weight of her mother's gaze was too much. Mom, you don't understand. Answer the question. Her mother snapped, uncharacteristically stern. Finally, Lisa crumbled. Yes, she screamed, tears streaming down her face. Yes, okay. I cheated. Are you happy now? The collective gasp that followed was deafening. Her mother sank into a chair, shaking her head in disbelief. How could you? She whispered. After everything he's done for you? Lisa turned back to me, her mascara running and her hands clenched into fists. Is this what you wanted? She demanded. To ruin my life? To make me the villain? I met her gaze, calm and unyielding. No, Lisa, I didn't ruin your life. You did. By now, half the guests had discreetly shuffled toward the exit, unable to handle the secondhand embarrassment. Those who remained stood frozen, unsure of whether to intervene or let the spectacle play out. Lisa's father stepped forward, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. You need to leave, he said quietly but firmly. What? No, now. Lisa looked around, realizing she had no allies left. She stormed toward the exit, pausing briefly to throw one last venomous glare at me. You're pathetic, she hissed before slamming the door behind her. The room was silent for a long moment after she left. Then, Jenna spoke up, breaking the tension. Well, that was something. A nervous chuckle rippled through the remaining guests. Slowly, people began approaching me, offering awkward but heartfelt condolences. Lisa's parents apologized profusely, clearly mortified by their daughter's behavior. I assured them that I didn't hold them responsible, but I was done pretending Lisa was someone she wasn't. By the end of the night, the crowd had dwindled to a handful of my closest friends. We sat around, sharing drinks and laughing at the absurdity of it all. For the first time in years, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I wasn't just the punchline anymore. I was free. The next morning, the weight of what had happened began to settle in. The party may have been a success in terms of exposing Lisa, but the fallout was just beginning. I woke up to a flood of messages, some supportive, others shocked, and a few from Lisa herself. She didn't waste time playing the victim. Her texts ranged from begging me to talk this through to outright blaming me for ruining her reputation. She claimed I had overreacted and twisted the narrative. According to her, her affair was a symptom of my shortcomings as a husband. I didn't reply to any of them. For the first time in years, I wasn't interested in hearing her excuses. The calls started coming in, too, first from her parents, then from mutual friends. Lisa's mom apologized again, practically in tears. I don't know where we went wrong with her, she said, but please, don't let this change how you feel about our family. Her dad was less emotional, but equally ashamed. She brought this on herself, he told me. I don't blame you for what you did. She needed to be held accountable. By the afternoon, Lisa had taken to social media. She posted a long, tearful video, trying to control the damage. In it, she admitted to making mistakes, but framed the entire ordeal as an exaggerated reaction to a complicated time in her marriage. I'm not perfect, she said, her voice trembling. But what my husband did last night was cruel. He didn't just hurt me. He humiliated me in front of everyone I care about. The comments section was a battlefield. Some of her followers rallied behind her, calling me controlling and vindictive. Others, especially those who had been at the party, quickly set the record straight. Lisa, you cheated on your husband. Stop trying to play the victim. I was there. He didn't humiliate you. He exposed the truth. Maybe you should have thought about this before you lied and betrayed him. I didn't comment. I didn't need to. The truth was already out there, and no amount of crocodile tears would change that. The day after the party, I met with my lawyer. I had all the evidence I needed to file for divorce, and I wasn't wasting any time. Lisa's texts and calls were relentless, but I ignored them. When I finally served her the papers, her response was predictably dramatic. "You're really going through with this?" she asked, her voice thick with tears when she showed up at my door uninvited. "After everything we've been through?" I didn't let her in. "After everything you've put me through," I corrected her. "Yes, Lisa, I'm done." Her tone shifted instantly. "You're making a mistake," she snapped. "You're nothing without me. No one will ever put up with you the way I did." I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "That's the idea." She left in a huff, slamming her car door so hard I half expected the window to shatter. It was the last time I saw her in person. In the weeks that followed, I started reclaiming the parts of myself that Lisa had chipped away over the years. I reconnected with old friends who had distanced themselves because of her toxic behavior. I joined a local gym, not to compete with Matt, but because it felt good to do something for myself. I even picked up an old hobby, woodworking, that Lisa used to ridicule as pointless. The messages of support kept coming in from people who had been at the party. Some were casual acquaintances. Others were people I hadn't spoken to in years. One of Lisa's former friends reached out with a simple message: "We've all seen her true colors now. You deserve better." The biggest surprise came a few weeks later when Jenna, Lisa's best friend, reached out. "Can we meet for coffee?" she asked. "I want to apologize." I was hesitant at first. Jenna had been one of Lisa's most loyal enablers, always laughing at her jokes at my expense. But curiosity got the better of me. Over coffee, Jenna admitted that the party had been a wake-up call. "I never realized how cruel she was to you," she said, stirring her latte nervously. "I thought it was just her sense of humor. But seeing the way she lied to all of us, I can't defend her anymore." She went on to say she'd cut ties with Lisa after the party. "I can't be friends with someone who treats people like that. I'm sorry for not standing up for you sooner." I accepted her apology. It felt strange, but also cathartic, to hear someone else acknowledge what I'd endured. Lisa's life, as far as I could tell, continued to unravel. Matt's wife had found out about the affair and kicked him out. Lisa's job, which relied heavily on her social reputation, began to suffer as word of her behavior spread. She tried to move on, posting photos of fun nights out with new friends, but the cracks were obvious. As for me, I was finally free. The divorce proceedings were almost too easy, and I suspected Lisa's lawyer knew she didn't have much of a leg to stand on. With the evidence I'd collected, it was clear who was at fault, and I wasn't in the mood to negotiate. I wanted a clean break. Lisa, true to form, tried to stir up drama during the process. She accused me of being controlling, of planning the party as some premeditated act of cruelty, and even tried to claim I was hiding assets. But her accusations fell apart the moment my lawyer presented the meticulous documentation of her affair. The judge wasn't impressed with her theatrics either. She tried one last trick, demanding alimony. "I sacrificed so much for this marriage," she argued, her voice trembling as if she were the victim. My lawyer leaned back in his chair and smiled. "Your Honor, given that she spent a significant portion of this marriage engaging in extramarital activities, I'd argue she's been investing in someone else's relationship, not this one." The room broke into muffled chuckles, and Lisa's face turned crimson. The judge ruled in my favor. She left the courtroom that day with nothing but her pride in tatters. After the divorce was finalized, Lisa's life seemed to spiral further out of control. Word of the party had spread, and her reputation was in shambles. Friends who once adored her distanced themselves, either out of loyalty to me or embarrassment by association. Her social media, once a curated highlight reel of her perfect life, became a series of desperate posts trying to salvage her image. She even tried reaching out to me a few times, claiming she wanted to apologize and make amends. I didn't take the bait. I knew it wasn't about making things right. It was about her trying to regain control of the narrative. I blocked her number, her emails, and finally her social media accounts. The last I heard, she'd moved to another city to start fresh. Good riddance. The silence that followed was jarring but welcome. For the first time in years, my life was truly my own. I took time to focus on myself, rebuilding the confidence Lisa had eroded over the years. Therapy helped, as did leaning on the friends who had stood by me through the storm. It wasn't long before I started noticing changes in myself. I laughed more. I slept better. I wasn't constantly second-guessing my worth or walking on eggshells to avoid setting off Lisa's temper. Life was simpler, and it was beautiful. One night, while grabbing coffee at a local spot I'd started frequenting, I ran into Jenna again. We'd kept things cordial after our initial meeting, but this time felt different. We started talking, and before I knew it, hours had passed. "I hope this doesn't sound weird," Jenna said, smiling nervously, "but you seem so much lighter now. Happier." "I am," I admitted, "and I owe you a thank you for saying something back then. It helped more than you know." We exchanged numbers, and over the next few months, what started as casual meetups turned into something deeper. Jenna had been one of the few people who truly saw the cracks in Lisa's facade, and now she was one of the few people who understood what I'd been through. It's been a year since that infamous party, and my life is unrecognizable. I'm in a healthy, supportive relationship with someone who doesn't belittle or undermine me. I've reconnected with old hobbies, made new friends, and found a version of myself I hadn't seen in years. As for Lisa, I don't think about her much anymore. I've heard bits and pieces, failed relationships, more drama, but it feels like a different lifetime. She's a chapter I've closed. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: the truth, no matter how painful, has a way of setting you free. And for the first time in years, I'm truly free. About a month after my life had finally settled into a peaceful rhythm, I received an unexpected letter. The envelope was plain, and the handwriting on it immediately gave it away. Lisa. Against my better judgment, I opened it. The letter was exactly what I'd expected. A long-winded attempt at shifting blame, garnished with a few half-hearted apologies. She rambled about how the party had ruined her life, and how she had only cheated because she felt unappreciated. But tucked in the middle of all her excuses was something that caught me off guard. "I didn't want to tell you this, but I think you should know. Matt wasn't the only one. There were others, but they didn't mean anything. I was just lost, trying to fill a void." I stared at the page, trying to process the words. Part of me felt sick, but another part, one I hadn't expected, felt vindicated. All those years of feeling like I wasn't enough, like I was the problem, had been a lie. It wasn't me. It was her. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. I shredded the letter and threw it away, finally closing the door on that chapter of my life. A few weeks later, I ran into Matt. I was at a hardware store, picking up supplies for a new woodworking project, when I saw him in the aisle. He looked worse for wear, thinner, paler, like life had taken a toll on him. For a moment, I debated walking away, but curiosity got the better of me. "Matt," I said, keeping my tone neutral. He turned, startled, and his face flushed when he saw me. "Oh, hey," he stammered. "Look, man, I didn't know she was going to." I held up a hand to stop him. "Relax. I'm not here to fight." He looked relieved but still uneasy. "I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice low. "For everything." I nodded. "I'm not the one you need to apologize to. Your wife is." He flinched but nodded. "She left me. Took the kids. I don't blame her." We stood in awkward silence for a moment before he cleared his throat. "For what it's worth, I think you handled it better than I would have." "That party, damn." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded and walked away. Seeing him like that didn't bring me satisfaction. It just made me grateful I was no longer in that toxic web. Things with Jenna continued to progress naturally. She was patient, understanding, and supportive in ways I didn't know I needed. We started spending more time together, weekend hikes, late-night conversations, even collaborating on a woodworking project she'd wanted to try. One night, as we sat on my back porch watching the stars, she turned to me with a smile. "You know, if someone had told me a year ago I'd be sitting here with you, I wouldn't have believed it." I laughed softly. "I wouldn't have believed it either." She hesitated, then reached for my hand. "You deserve to be happy, you know? Really happy. And I hope you know that now." I squeezed her hand, realizing for the first time in years that I truly did. Months later, I got one last message from Lisa. This time, it was an email. "I know you probably won't respond, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I see now how much I took you for granted, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. I hope you're happy." I didn't reply. The words rang hollow, and I didn't need them to heal. I'd already moved on. But something about her message felt like the final nail in the coffin of our relationship. It was over, truly over, and I felt nothing but relief. Now, over a year since the infamous party, my life is unrecognizable. Jenna and I are officially together, and we've built a relationship based on trust, respect, and honesty. My woodworking hobby has turned into a small side business, and I've reconnected with friends and family in ways I never thought possible. Looking back, the party wasn't just about exposing Lisa. It was about reclaiming myself, my dignity, and my life. And for that, I have no regrets. Because sometimes, the truth doesn't just set you free. It sets you on a path to something far better than you ever imagined. As the months turned into a full year since the party, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. It was strange, how something that felt like my entire world crumbling had, in hindsight, been the start of a better life. I was sitting on my porch one evening, watching the sunset with Jenna. She had a way of calming me, of grounding me in the present. The golden light reflected in her eyes as she turned to me, a soft smile playing on her lips. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked. I laughed lightly. I was just thinking how different things are now. How different I am. She tilted her head, curious. "In a good way, I hope?" "Definitely," I said, squeezing her hand. "A year ago, I felt like a shadow of myself. Now I feel alive again. Whole." Her smile widened, and she leaned her head against my shoulder. "You deserve that," she said simply. It was inevitable that I'd run into Lisa eventually, even with her moving to a different city. It happened one afternoon while I was at a coffee shop in town, grabbing a quick espresso before heading to meet Jenna. I saw her as I turned to leave, standing by the counter, scrolling on her phone. She looked different, tired, worn down. Her once perfectly styled hair was pulled into a messy bun, and her designer bag hung limply at her side. For a moment, I considered slipping out unnoticed, but she looked up and caught my eye. Her face shifted, shock, embarrassment, and then something I couldn't quite place. She gave a small, hesitant wave. I nodded politely, acknowledging her without inviting a conversation. But, of course, Lisa being Lisa, she approached anyway. "Hi," she said, her voice softer than I remembered. "I wasn't expecting to see you." "Same here," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "How are you?" She hesitated, clearly unsure how much to share. "I'm okay," she said finally. "Things have been challenging." I nodded, offering no further prompt. The silence stretched between us, and for once, she seemed to struggle to fill it. "Listen," she said eventually, her voice cracking slightly. "I know I've said it before, but I really am sorry. For everything." I looked at her for a long moment, searching for any sign of manipulation or insincerity. But she seemed genuine, defeated, even. "I've moved on, Lisa," I said gently but firmly. "I hope you find a way to do the same." Her eyes welled up, and she nodded. "I'm trying," she whispered. "I really am." I wished her well and walked away, feeling lighter than I expected. Closure, it seemed, had come full circle. Jenna and I grew closer with each passing day, and I began to realize something I hadn't felt in years: excitement for the future. With her, everything felt easy, like we were partners in every sense of the word. One evening, as we were working on a joint woodworking project, a custom coffee table she dreamed up. I caught myself staring at her, marveling at how she made even the simplest moments feel meaningful. "Jenna," I said suddenly, my voice catching her off guard. She looked up, a streak of sawdust across her cheek. "Yeah, I love you," I said, the words spilling out before I could overthink them. "I don't think I've ever said it, but I do. I love you." Her face softened, and she stepped closer, brushing her hand against mine. "I love you too," she said, her voice steady and sure. "Life isn't perfect, it never is, but it's mine now." Free of the weight of Lisa's betrayal, I found a version of myself I'm proud of. A man who values honesty, kindness, and the people who bring light into his life. Lisa's chapter is firmly closed, a part of my story but not the defining one. Jenna and I continue to build a life together, one filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities. And as for the infamous party, it's become something of a legend among those who were there. Every now and then, someone brings it up, marveling at the audacity of it all. I just smile and shrug, because in the end, it wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life, and for that, I'll always be grateful.